Overall, this trailer is more appealing than the teaser, partly because it showcases the better sides of Anyway, now let's take some time to talk more about the last content drops of 2024, those being Bundles of Bravery and The Garden Awakens. We'll also talk about the upcoming first content drop of 2025. So, let's begin. Are we gonna do the background music that we do? You know, that thing? Are we gonna do that? Okay, there we go. In part 1 of this video essay, we briefly went over some basic stuff regarding the Bundles of Bravery drop. We talked about bundles being re-added to the game, as well as hardcore mode being added to Bedrock Edition, as well as some additional details about both of those things. On October 22nd, 2024, Bundles of Bravery would release as 1.21.2 on Java and 1.21.40 on Bedrock. Yeah. Now let's take a look at some details we didn't cover in part 1. Starting with bundles, one thing to note is that the crafting recipe is now a lot simpler than it originally was. Additionally, the open bundle texture was updated, being split into 2 textures for the front and back. The bundle now opens whenever an item is selected. We already discussed in part 1 that the bundles can now be dyed in different colors, but I guess I'll now mention that there's specifically 16 colors that they can be dyed. Except, wait, there's already specifically 16 dyes to begin with, so that was kind of already implied. Whatever. Also, apparently this is the first time that bundles are introduced into Bedrock, because apparently they didn't have them during the Caves and Cliffs era. There's some other stuff, but I think we've covered enough. Let's move on to discussing the hardcore mode, or bravery, side of this drop. In part 1, it was mentioned that this drop would bring hardcore to Bedrock. However, there is also a Java aspect here, as this drop also brought hardcore to Java realms. Again, I'm actually genuinely surprised to find out that hardcore mode was not as previously widespread as I thought. The changelog establishes that hardcore for Bedrock had been planned earlier on, and it was previously available as a preview-only feature. The Bundles of Bravery drop marked the end of this testing phase. There are some other changes in this drop which are not related to bundles or bravery, such as changes to blocks, mobs, and other stuff. Additionally, some bugs were fixed in smaller updates, such as 1.21.3 for Java and 1.21.41 for Bedrock. I'm not going over all of that here though. Go consult the changelogs for yourself if you want to learn more. Anyways, now let's move on to discussing the last content drop of 2024, The Garden Awakens. In part 2, we talked about how Agnes showed us a content drop that would add a new mob called the Creaking and a new biome called the Pale Garden. We also saw some behind the scenes material related to how they made the visuals and sounds and stuff. This drop, called The Garden Awakens, released on December 3rd, 2024 as 1.21.4 for Java and 1.21.50 for Bedrock. Let's take a look at some of the finer details of this update. So in regards to the creaking, we know the basic gist of it. It moves when your eyes are turned and is controlled by a central computer. Here's some more tidbits of information to know about it. Naturally spawned creakings are nocturnal, which means they spawn at night and despawn at day. However, the latter case may not be so if the day is stormy. Additionally, there are other conditions under which a creaking may be removed or replaced. The creaking's melee attacks deal 1.5 hearts of damage, if you're on normal difficulty, that is. The creaking will generally follow players up to 32 blocks away from the heart. Wearing a carved pumpkin on your head will allow you to see a creaking without making it freeze. Naturally spawned creakings may have some differences from artificially spawned creakings. There's some other details as well, but for the sake of brevity, I'm not going to cover all of it. Let's move on to discussing the Pale Garden as well as its various aspects. The Pale Garden is a variation of the Dark Forest where animals don't spawn naturally and music is forbidden. It also emits particles. The garden is home to plant structures such as pale moss patches and pale oak trees. Pale oak trees obviously have a lot of the tree stuff you can expect from most other trees, including wooden materials, saplings, and leaves. However, they also have stuff like pale hanging moss and sometimes a creaking heart. The creaking heart, as we've established, is the block that controls the creaking. It is only active when placed between two pale oak logs of the same orientation, and it can only be deactivated when broken. It'll send particles towards a connected creaking when that creaking gets hit by a player or projectiles. This will also cause the heart to exude 2 to 3 resin clumps. Like other wooden blocks, it is mined most efficiently with an axe. However, this particular block will only drop if mined with the Silk Touch enchantment. Otherwise, it'll just drop some XP and resin clumps. Also, the creaking heart can be crafted using 2 pale oak logs and a block of resin. By the way, have I mentioned that resin exists? It doesn't really do a lot, but you can make blocks and stuff with it, I guess. Maybe it'll have more usage in the future. Who knows? A similarly named yet different material called toxic resin existed in the April Fool's Day update 24W14 Potato. I don't really have much else to say on that. Just thought it was interesting to note. Anyways, this update also added a flower which can open and close and looks kinda cool, I guess, or something. I don't know. There's also the pale moss blocks and carpets which generate in the pale moss patches. And of course there's a whole bunch of other changes I don't have time to go over. There was also a bedrock event. I didn't play it. So overall, I think the last 2 2024 drops were pretty okay. The Bundles of Bravery drop was kind of whatever since its main attractions were 2 things that kinda already existed before but were reintroduced and somewhat reworked and stuff. It did have some interesting side changes such as the redstone torch change and adding more baby animals to Java, but otherwise it kinda just was what it was. However, I know that these new updates are supposed to be smaller, so I'm not really complaining or anything. Bundles of Bravery served as a simple start to an era of simple updates. I mean, technically there was the Armored Paws drop sometime before this one, but the major update known as Tricky Trials was lodged between this one and that one, so yeah. Anyways, the Garden Awakens, while still relatively small, was certainly 1 or more steps up from Bundles of Bravery. Its new mob and new biome added some interesting concepts and mechanics which not only serve as an interesting challenge for survival mode, but could also have interesting potential for creators of adventure mode maps. The new blocks provide new opportunities for people who just want to make stuff in creative mode as well. We can now use wooden planks that are a more proper white rather than having to settle for something that's kind of whitish but is really more in between beige and yellow. Overall, the Garden Awakens demonstrates the true potential of these drops. It shows that even smaller scale updates can implement a decent amount of interesting things. As demonstrated by Bundles of Bravery, however, these updates don't necessarily have to go so far. This new approach allows more leeway for Mojang to develop updates without them necessarily seeming underwhelming on the side of players or stressful on the side of developers. Maybe we'll still get some bigger updates in the future, but hopefully the current development philosophy will allow for Mojang to make more proper distinctions between small-scale and large-scale updates. By doing that, hopefully we'll avoid another Trails and Tales situation. So yeah, overall these drops are good and this new approach seems to be okay so far. Anyways, now that we've covered that stuff, let's take a look at the upcoming drop for this year, the Big 2025. This drop is referred to by the community as Spring Drop 2025 or Drop 1 2025, though the official name is currently unknown. This drop will introduce new variants of mobs such as cows, chickens, and pigs. Previously existing variants of sheep will also have new spawning rules based on what biomes they spawn in. There will be new vegetation such as leaf litter, bushes, and cactus flowers. Fireflies are back, in pog form. Well, actually as particles, but you know. There are these new test blocks which, for right now, are Java Edition exclusives. These and other changes are currently available in snapshots, betas, and previews. This drop to me seems to share aspects of both of the previously discussed drops. Like Bundles of Bravery, it has a big focus on revisiting some old things. On the other hand, like The Garden Awakens, it's also introducing rather significant changes which could bring interesting new possibilities to the world of Minecraft. Though this drop is not yet out and there may be some changes yet to come, I think it'll turn out pretty decent based on what we've seen so far. Like the two that came before it, this drop seems to be a testament to the benefits of this ongoing development philosophy. And that's pretty neat, I guess. So, what now? Oh yeah, that. So in case you didn't know, sometime back in 2024, a guy named Kian Bros made it his mission to sue Mojang. You might ask why he did so. Well, in 2023, Mojang started enforcing some rules against guns and stuff like that, which had negative implications for a server Kian was working on at the time. After some digging, Kian found out that Mojang was enforcing these rules in a kind of shady way and was also generally sketchy regarding how it phrased certain legal terms in their documents and whatnot. He also talks a bit about problems related to gambling and loot crate stuff on servers and how Mojang has not really done anything about that. And this stuff is said to be in violation of Swedish law. I don't want to spoil everything he says in the video, so I encourage you to maybe go watch it for yourself so you can know the finer details and whatnot. You don't have to, but you can. Anyways, what do I think of the situation? Well, personally I think Kian makes some good points when it comes to certain things. I myself am generally familiar with the contents of Mojang's legal documents because of a phase I had some time ago where I would scrupulously study such things. I'm not gonna dive too deep into why that phase was a thing because it was kinda related to some personal stuff going on that's not really the subject of this video. Anyways, because of my past studying of Mojang's legal documents, I kind of understand what Kian is getting at with some stuff. Mojang does have some dubious usage of terminology and stuff at times. One such example is one part where they seem to try to redefine what the word commercial means. The commonly accepted definition of commercial relates to, well, commerce and money and all that. However, the usage guidelines seem to suggest that the term commercial can apply to pretty much anything that's shared publicly, regardless of whether that thing aims to make money or not. I personally find that a bit strange, and I don't really know what to make of it. And it's because of that kind of stuff that I think some of what Kian is saying makes sense. However, there are certain parts which feel a tiny bit manipulative, so to speak. Let me explain. I don't mean to say that this guy is some kind of malicious mastermind who has ulterior motives of some kind. From what I can tell, he seems pretty genuine in his intentions. What I mean is that he kinda comes off as somewhat needlessly aggressive sometimes. Don't get me wrong, Kian is allowed to express his feelings on the matter. He arguably has more right to than anyone else since he's personally affected by this. However, I feel like there are some points where he insists on casting things from Mojang through his own lens rather than simply presenting them as they are. Here's an example. In the beginning, he's talking about the Mojang directive against guns and weapons. He points out how, later down the line, they kind of rephrase this a bit. He seems to frame it as though they are changing the directive, even though it's likely that they're just trying to clarify what they initially meant by it. I'm not necessarily trying to defend the directive itself. Rather, I'm just critiquing Kian for being slightly disingenuous. I get that he's expressing things from his point of view, so obviously he's going to be a bit biased. However, this isn't merely some rant commentary video he's sharing. This is a call to legal action. This kind of warrants a certain amount of professionalism. Hopefully he'll keep that in mind when the proposed court battle begins. Speaking of which, what's the current status of all this? Well, not long after the video was uploaded, the crowdfunding campaign reached its goal, which means he's got the financial backing for the lawsuit to take place. After that, he posted some updates as time went by, with the latest being posted in February. Apparently, now that Kian has received the funds, he is currently seeking out legal representatives who will help him in court. So it looks like things are in motion, but there's still quite a way to go. How this whole situation will ultimately end up is anyone's guess, of course. Leave your thoughts in the comments, I guess, if you wanna. Alright, so what now? Man, I spent like a good chunk of part 2 talking about all that. I don't think there's much else to... They made another trailer? Really? Well, I guess the release date is getting closer. Alright, I guess I'll cover this one. Gotta make it quick though. I think the program has been acting up after being left on for so long. It'll probably need to have some maintenance done soon. Anyways, let's get this over with. This new trailer is pretty short, being approximately only 1 minute long. This is because it's a TV spot made for the NBA All-Star Weekend. Despite its short length, it still showcases a good amount of new clips. It shows some more of the weird bucket sting, some closer looks at the villagers, and rather notably, a creeper exploding. We can see that the weird bucket sting ends up being used as nunchucks of sorts, being referred to as buckchuckets. The villagers up close honestly kinda look as I expected. However, there are some other tidbits to note with some of these shots. In the Iron Golem shot, which is a zoomed out version of a shot shown in the previous trailer, we can more clearly see a cow. The movie cow design was not technically first revealed here though. An animation of it was previously posted on the official Warner Bros. Giphy account. The shot of a villager going through the portal is part of a subplot involving wacky real-world hijinks. Going back to the first villager shot, we can also see some baby villagers in the background. Again, they look more or less how you might expect them to. The part with the creeper explosion is a bit interesting to analyze. The way they implemented the lighting up aspect was kind of cool, I guess. However, one weird aspect here is the sounds of the creeper.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry.
Rather than its well-known hissing sounds from the game, it makes these weird squeaky sounds. I wouldn't necessarily know if this is really a bad thing. Kind of unexpected at the very least, though. Also, Steve says this line, I guess.
This is Minecraft!
This new trailer got a generally positive reception, though still not without some detractors. Some of this detraction, however, may not be about the trailer itself. Instead, it appears to be the result of people frustrated about Warner Bros. Falsely copyright claiming C418's music. Luckily, C418 got on the case, so it may not be a problem for too long. According to him, it appears to have been caused by an error of some kind. You know what else might have been caused by an error of some kind? Hiring David Zack. I think we should wrap this up. Overall, this trailer was fine, I guess. Don't know how the movie as a whole will turn out, but I guess the world will find that out soon enough. So what can I say overall about the future of Minecraft based on the stuff I've talked about? Well, obviously, as it's been said, the future is unwritten. However, based on some things, such as the new approach to updates as well as the abolition of the mob vote, it seems Mojang is trying to appeal a bit more to what the community presumably wants. Some tension continues to thrive though, as indicated by some stuff related to a Minecraft movie as well as Kian's proposed lawsuit. Nonetheless, Minecraft as a game, franchise, and community have managed to survive for 15 years, going on 16 this year. Old faces may leave us, some sadly not by choice, but their impact will remain, as will ours. For better or for worse, this is Minecraft. Alright, that should wrap it up. Run code E-8436.
This is Minecraft.